Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's Insight. It's great to have you here, and thanks for all the great response we've had so far. Now, I'm really excited to say that this week we're joined by Amy Truesdale, who many of you will know as a Para Taekwondo athlete and fighter. She's the first to qualify for the Paralympics in Tokyo later this year, so it's great that she's joined us today to talk about her experience, fitness, and training. So, Amy, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So much to talk about, and I really want to talk first of all about your Paralympics. You're in Manchester, where you were telling me before that there's a dedicated centre for the Para Taekwondo team and the other team as well. Tell us a little bit about the kind of facilities and what you're doing in your training ready for Tokyo this year.
Yes, so the facility in Manchester, it's the Olympic and Paralympic team together. A usual day for me would be training twice a day, Monday to Friday. So the mixture of training could be strength and conditioning, which could be a weight session, it could be bike or a treadmill session, and then followed by a kicking session, which would be every day. So the main kicking session would be going over technical and tactical skills that we need to progress and develop to help with our game plan going into a match situation.
You must get questions all the time about, what does it take to become a Paralympian? And it is a remarkable achievement to get as far as you have. Did you have any idea when you were getting into this how much work would be involved and how disciplined you had to be in your training?
I suppose a Paralympic journey was never on my radar because when I first started Taekwondo at the age of 8, I just went along to a club and it was everybody that had two limbs. So I was the only person that had part of my arm missing. I ended up becoming like world champion against able-bodied athletes. So I just continued doing that for so many years, over 22 years, I think I did the sport for. And then I transferred over to Para Taekwondo as I just thought it would create another opportunity. I did start going into the Paralympic Centre 3 days a week, and I think that was just to give me a bit of familiarisation of what is going to be expected when I eventually did go full time. So I think just going in 2-3 days a week, that gave me good preparation of what would actually be expected of me when I became a full time athlete.
One of the things that's really refreshing to hear is how much support is given to Paralympians. When we look back to 2012, when really it seemed to reach a crescendo in terms of the support for the sport. How are you feeling it now, the general feeling towards Paralympics?
I think 2012 was probably the best it's going to be with Paralympic sport. I think Rio, that wasn't good representation for Paralympic athletes, particularly because there was no money to support the athletes and it was nearly withdrawn from Rio. I think Japan has got a lot of work to do, as there is still obviously issues that they haven't got the correct accessibility for disabled athletes. So I feel like the last few years, yes, there has been an increase in sort of positive representation, but I do feel there's a lot more steps that do need to take place.
That's really interesting, and it was a shame in a sense that that momentum from London didn't just keep on escalating all the way through. But we'll come back to your sport and we'll come back to your Paralympic work. But for people watching, they will look at you and think about your tremendous success. But of course, you were a Reach child, like so many who came to Reach and discovered the support that was available. Give us an idea of how that all happened, how you first came to Reach, and those first few years.
Yeah, so I first joined Reach as a child. My parents just they must have seen it advertised and they got involved and just thought it would be a great opportunity to meet other families who've got a child with the same disability as myself. So yeah, we used to go to the regular meetings every October. We got to meet other families, do all the fun stuff that kids do, go to discos, try out other sports. So yeah, it was just a really good community to and especially for parents to have those conversations with other parents on how their child's coping, any sort of advice that they need. So yeah, they were really valuable growing up.
Yeah, we often see Reach as being really that kind of support bubble for especially new parents of Reach children who, are coming to Reach for the very first time and don't really know or realize how much valuable support there is there for their child. Do you remember your parents talking about those initial times and how they felt as parents that they were being supported?
I think at the time we only sort of were involved every October. I think years ago, because we're talking maybe 25, 30 years ago when I was attending regular. From then till now, I know there is so much more that's going on. So I think there's more opportunities to be involved. But from what I do remember, that they really did enjoy spending time with other families. But that's the only sort of feedback that I can remember receiving from my parents.
Now, for your parents as well to see that you had this interest in sport, they took you to the Taekwondo club and things. How did they respond to your increasing interest in sports generally? And were they making any sort of special allowances for your difference, or did they sort of say, just get on with it, you'll be fine? How did they deal with all of that, being obviously a Reach child?
Um, the way my parents brought me up, they were just like cruel to be kind in a way. So they didn't really do anything for me. I had to find my own independence. So I was never really treated any differently. It was just like, you are no different, get involved with everybody else. So no sort of allowances were really made, which I know some people may think it's a little bit cruel, but I think it's done me in good stead really, because then I've got that own sort of grit and determination myself, which has helped me later on in life, especially going into professional sport.
We hear that a lot, actually, don't we? There's a variety of ways that parents respond to having a child with a limb difference. And it's always interesting that you hear children talk all the time about how they kind of work it out. And, the level of ingenuity from Reach children is extraordinary. Do you have any early memories of how you dealt with something maybe a little bit differently because you had to?
I can remember an incident as a child. I must have been maybe 2, 3 years of age, and I was like crying to my dad, saying, "Please, can you tie my shoelaces?" And he was just like, "No, I'm not doing them. Do them yourself." And then he came home with like a little plastic shoe, and I started practicing on that. And eventually, I went, "Oh, Dad, look, I've done it." And he said, like, they weren't really tight, but he said, "You did it on your own." But his response was, he parented me like that because he didn't want to be doing my shoelaces when I was 18, 19 years of age. So that's probably one instance that I can remember. I'm actually really struggling with this, but what way round can I sort of work this problem out?
And obviously you'll have spent your whole life adapting and working it out. What about in your current environment in sport? The kind of things, are you still discovering things that you have to work out and think, okay, so how do I get around this particular challenge?
Um, so for instance, if I'm in a gym, if I was doing weights, you do need two arms for quite a lot of the weight exercises. So I would have like an adaptation called active hands, which would link on to a weight just so I've got that even distribution if I was lifting. Other sort of things like if I was doing press ups, I would get like a sponge sort of foam, again, just to give me that same level of just same level that my arms are on. So just little things like that. You discover in training, like, well, that's going to be a bit tricky. What can I use to sort of accommodate me in a better way?
We talked earlier on, Amy, about the Reach family and the ideas and the support that you get from the Reach family. What about within the whole Paralympics movement? Because we're aware there's a tremendous amount of support there. Dedicated training centres and so on. What kind of support have you had as a para taekwondo athlete? What is there anything specific that you feel that they've been able to help you with?
Good question. I just feel like they've probably just treated me the same as what they would any other athlete to try and achieve my goals. But yeah, that's it really.
And it is great that that exists, where obviously 20, 30 years ago it probably wasn't really there, or it was in a fledgling state. But one of the things we wanted to talk about in this interview was about your training program, because obviously when you have a limb difference, not only as you outlined before, does your training have to be different, but you as an individual, you have to balance your body and balance the way that you train so that you become balanced in your strength and everything. Give us an idea a little bit about how you go about that.
Um, I think it's a bit different for myself because I was born with my arm this way. It's like I don't really know any difference. So I've already sort of trained my body to make a bit more. It's a bit wonky, I suppose. I've got more weight on one side of my body. But for someone who's maybe lost their arm, a prosthetic, or a different sort of adaptation, so they're more evened out, so to speak, that can be really beneficial. I've sort of like just learnt to deal with it, but I do know that I do have a lot more weight on one side, and maybe from when I've had like sports massages, they can see that I do have more muscle on the right hand side, which is obviously my dominant side compared to my left. So things like that. It's just trying to maybe build up my left side. So I will even do weights on my left side to try and increase that muscle mass. And it's just finding your own adaptations. There's still exercises that I would be able to do that would target the specific muscle groups that I'm looking for, but I can do it without using two arms.
And what about the professionals in terms of the help that you get with adaptations? Because obviously everyone within the para team are going to have differences in their in maybe whether it be with their arms, whatever it might be. So how much expertise is there to help you personally adapt? Because obviously your circumstances are going to be unique to you.
Yeah, we do have a lot of support. So we'll have like head physios there that will have done like a classification course. So every para athlete is in a different classification. So therefore they do have different requirements. So we are fortunate enough that our medical team has that knowledge. So then they can provide the right sort of equipment, the right assessment to each individual.
And when it comes to your work as a Paralympian, there's it is truly hard work. People often don't realize that, but you're obviously put through a specific training regime, and you talked there about balancing your body and weights on your left hand side. What kind of things have you learned that maybe youngsters or older children for that matter, who are not Paralympians, they're not maybe big exercise gurus, but little tips that have helped you that might help them to just keep fitter and keep in more of a balance?
I think the main thing is that you will find a way. Just try your best and do whatever works well for you. I think the main thing is to not be concerned about what other people think of you. If people are looking at you thinking, why are they doing that exercise in their own way? A lot of the time people are looking at you because they're quite inspired by the way you are doing stuff. So I think the main thing is don't worry what you look like, just try your best, find the adaptations. And I think like a piece of advice that I would give to somebody younger is don't be afraid to ask other people who have got the same disability as you questions. I don't think anything is a silly question. The more people that you can speak to get that knowledge, it's really going to help you find other ways of how you can succeed in life.
Now, it's quite interesting. You said earlier on that you went down the Taekwondo route, working initially in competitions and things with fully abled individuals, and you only went down the para route later on. What would you say to a young person watching this, or a parent of a young person who's interested in becoming a Paralympian? What are the kind of things that they could do to prepare themselves mentally and physically for that journey?
I think there's loads of things really. I think again, make sure you've got a bit of background knowledge of the sport, what's required of you. Um, Anything that's going to help improve your timing or coordination. So if you do look at para sports in general, people may have never done a martial art in their life, but they've got transferable skills because they've played netball. So therefore they can work in a team environment. They can move quite quickly. They're quite good at decision making. So even if it's a sport that you've never done before, you'll be quite surprised how many skills that you've already acquired that you can actually transfer in. So I think just trying your best, making sure your coordination is at a good level, and just being confident and making sure you enjoy it really. I think the enjoyment's the big sort of thing. If you're enjoying it, you will succeed and you will do well because it's fun and it's play. It's not actually a chore or it's not like work or so that's probably my advice.
No, that's really, really great advice, and actually that applies to so many different things in life as well. So, that's brilliant. Thanks so much for that, because I know that you and all of the Paralympians who are part of Reach are a real inspiration to the next generation of Paralympians. So it's great that you can spend the time with us today. But I just want to go back to where we started and talk about Tokyo, because to have got all that way ready to go to Tokyo, and then of course we've managed to get this far in the conversation without talking about COVID, which is pretty amazing. But to then have have had that dashed, and then now to rebuild up towards the Olympics again in 2021. How does it all feel? Does it feel real?
It's been very crazy. So when we first found out about COVID, I sort of mentally prepared that it's very likely the games were going to be postponed. So when the official announcement was made, I just made the decision I'm going to continue training exactly like I would be. And that's exactly what I have done. So I've not competed since October 2019, but during lockdown, I've still managed to train twice a day. So nothing's really changed for me. I just feel I'm in a very fortunate situation because you can actually do Taekwondo anywhere, whether it's you can do it indoors, I can kick inside, I need a small space. It's just, people who require a lot of equipment. If you're a Paralympic swimmer, you do need a Paralympic or Olympic size swimming pool. So I've been very fortunate in that sense, really. And it's just been full steam ahead and just staying focused now for fingers crossed September when the games will be rescheduled for.
Well, we'll all obviously be here supporting and giving you a massive Reach hug, giving you every best wish for that journey over there and throughout the games. And how are you ready for the celebrity status that you're going to have when you come back from those games? Are you ready for that?
I'm not sure. Like, hopefully, I will get some recognition, which will be really good. But my main aim is just to compete at the games, and I would love somebody, maybe from Reach or not even from Reach, somebody who's got a child and be watching me on television and be like, "Oh my word, this is what you can achieve." I think the main thing is as long as I can be a role model and make people realise that you do not have to put limitations on yourself, that would be more sort of special to me than the celebrity status.
Well, that's a fantastic philosophy, Amy, and thank you so much. We wish you all the very best for Tokyo in September. We will absolutely be rooting for you. Please don't forget us at Reach and all of your Reach family. I know that they'll be watching very, very keenly, and we look forward to talking to you again on the other side, as it were. But in the meantime, Amy Truesdale, thank you so much indeed for joining us. and we're now going to continue this week's Insight. And it's a great pleasure to introduce another fabulous guest. He's Andy Brittles from Limpower. Hi, Andy.
Hi, good morning.
It's great to see you, and thank you for taking the time to spend with us. First of all, tell us a little bit about Limpower and the work that you do.
Okay, Limpower is what's described as a national disability sports organisation. There are 7 in the country, representing different impairment groups such as people with cerebral palsy, people in wheelchairs, people who are visually impaired or blind. It was established in 2009 by my chief exec, a lady called Kira Roche, to represent the interests of all amputees and people with a limb impairment. And my role is very much around supporting, advising, developing opportunities, working with numerous partners to ensure that their products and programs are inclusive of the people that we engage with.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and I know there's a huge demand for this, and the amount of times this comes up in conversation with Reach families is absolutely huge. And I know you've got a short presentation you'd like to give us that will give us a little bit more of a background to your work as well.
Yes, I have. So this presentation is aimed at just educating people, giving them a little bit more information about how you access sport and physical activity, whether that be in a school or in a community environment. So when we talk about sport and physical activity, we sometimes forget how many people deliver sport and provide sporting opportunities for the community. And they're just a list of some of the providers of opportunities. Obviously, some of them you may have heard of, such as Sport England or national governing bodies of sport. But then you have people, other organisations like Age UK, Small People, the other organisations, third sector organisations that provide opportunities. And those opportunities should be inclusive for everybody in the community. So where does sport and interest of activity come? Well, basically, it starts with school, and there is an obligation in law regarding disability in education, discrimination in education. And it states that it's unlawful for schools not to treat disabled pupils less favourably than others. And that means that the curriculum should be inclusive of all children, no matter what their impairment. We do have some challenges. When I went to school, there was less inclusion, but things are a lot better now around how children can be included and looking at ways for them to be included. There's more support for teachers and supporting teachers with resources and support about how they can include more children with impairments, with limb loss. And there's organisations such as the Youth Sport Trust, somebody that I've worked with for a number of years, and they're a children's charity working to ensure that a child enjoys the challenging benefits of sport and play. And that is so important to a child's development, not only from its motor skills, but also more importantly from the social aspect of being involved in sport and physical activity with your friends and peers. And then moving from school, we have sport in the community. So we have after school clubs, obviously. But then as you get older, there's opportunities for you to play in the community. And though the list before is some of the organisations that provide sports opportunities, here are some of the main ones. So local authority provision. So local councils provide opportunities within their leisure centres, within their parks, within their community to get everybody active. And then above that, there's active partnerships. Active partnerships, there are 43 in this country, and they tend to be based in a county. And they provide information and support and direction to their partners, which are national governing bodies of sport and health, but also to the community, directing community to inclusive opportunities, looking for an opportunity for where you can actually participate. And they have some really good websites giving information, not just about participation, but opportunities to volunteer, opportunities to develop as a leader, to be a coach. So all those sport and leisure opportunities they provide. And then we have national governing bodies of sport. They provide the sporting opportunity. They are the sport-specific governing bodies. So people like the FA, people like Swim England, England Netball, England Badminton, they provide the opportunities for people to play the sport. So they develop the sport, they support their clubs, their coaches, and in a lot of cases, they talent ID. So they will be looking for identification of talent to progress. That could be in a club setting. It could also be at the Paralympics. Who knows? They are always looking for talent. So who can help? Well, in local authority, and a number of them are local authority trusts now, they have sports development officers based there whose job is to direct and develop opportunity in their local area. So that if you contacted the leisure department and asked them where you could go, and they may ask you where you live and the particular sport, then they should direct you to an opportunity appropriate to your ability, which we would want to see lots of children going to mainstream clubs. Active partnerships, they're a next level up. They look more at a county-wide opportunity, and therefore will be working with national governing bodies of sport to ensure that their provision is inclusive of everybody, but also they provide information around funding, around competitions, around leadership and development, coaching qualifications for all people to access. And like I say, national governing bodies of sport, they're national organisations, but if you contact them, you can ask them where their local opportunities are for you or your child to go and participate in sport. And finally, there's Amputee Charities, of which Limpower is one. And we provide support, advice, guidance, training, and also low-level participation opportunities, because it's so important sometimes for children to be amongst other children similar to themselves, where they can assess their ability. As an amputee myself, I like to play golf against other amputees to see where I am in my level of golf, but more importantly, I'm a member of a local golf club, so I can play against club members and again look to develop my skills. So they're organisations that can offer advice, guidance and support, and particularly people like Limpower, we can follow up. So if there's a blockage in the system, so if you ring a local authority and you don't get the information you require, or you need some support around accessing swimming, then come to us and we can give you advice and take up your case and follow that through. And in most cases, it's a lack of information and support that coaches and these organisations need. And as a charity, we can offer those. So useful contacts. If you contact your local authority, you can usually find your leisure department or your leisure trust. Active partnerships, the website lists all the active partnerships in your area. So if you type in your postcode, it'll tell you which active partnership you are and take you to their website for you to look on that site for information around inclusion or just general clubs that your child can access. National governing bodies of sport, they all have their own websites. They all provide different levels of information, and that can be regarding coaching courses, competitions, talent identification, all the resources they have. Youth Sport Trust are a really interesting organisation in that they are a children's charity supporting education, and they work through developing hub schools. So in a county, you may have a number of hub schools that focus on disability, and they offer their level of expertise and support to mainstream schools. So if your child is experiencing some challenges within school and being included in PE fully, then contact the Youth Sport Trust or contact me, and we can make sure that you get support and understand the links to the structure that can support the school to be more inclusive. And finally, ourselves, Limpower. we provide resources, training, competitions, come and try at events. We provide dance resources. We provide opportunities to meet other people. We also administer a number of projects for government. But we're there to help and advise and support so that you can have an experience that all children experience around sport and physical activity, and hopefully enjoy sport for the whole of your life, the rest of your life. And there are my contact details. Feel free to visit our website, and also feel free to contact me for a chat or any way that I can help.
Andy, that was really, really helpful. Thanks for that. And what comes across is the amount of support that is available and how that's changed over the years. And it's wonderful when we have our Reach weekends, when different organisations come and share all of this practical advice. It's really, really helpful. But I know that for you, this is particularly close to your heart. You mentioned about being an amputee yourself. So give us some idea about how you got involved with Limb Power and also all the other work that you do.
Yes, well, I'm actually a disabled person. I have spina bifida, and a number of years ago I lost my leg. And at the time I was an electrical engineer. I'd been doing that job for a number of years, and I started to play sport. I started to play golf, which I'd always wanted to do. And somebody said to me that disability sport's going to be big business, and there's not enough disabled people working in sport, making decisions for disabled people. I wasn't sporty at school. I was one of those children that was excluded from PE because of my impairment. And I went to university. I took a change of career, went to university, did a sports degree. And I've worked in sport and disability sport for 20 odd years, working at different levels, developing opportunities. I've had some major successes in, I developed frame football for children who have cerebral palsy, who use frames. The FA, Football Association, adopted that. I've worked with the Youth Sport Trust on inclusion policies and procedures. I've worked on programs for the Paralympics, and I would advise anybody that has an interest in sport, whether you be disabled or not, to follow that. I love my job. I think it is the best job in the world, and to be able to make a difference to people's lives is the best thing possible.
And there's no greater motivation than having that as a real inspirational background, and the way you get involved is fantastic. One of the things that I noticed you were talking there about, is the raft of children who are in the middle. In other words, not every child is going to become a Paralympian, and not every child wants to do a huge amount of sport, but they still want to be involved. And it's really refreshing. You hear about the stuff that you're talking about, where you're helping people just to get more active, just to be able to do more. And, tell us maybe an idea of how you help with somebody who just wants to be more active, not necessarily to become a Paralympian.
Yeah, that's true. I think Paralympians are absolutely wonderful, as are Olympians, but the vast majority of the community will never reach that level. And sport and physical activity is important, not just for your physical well-being, but your mental well-being. So we may receive an inquiry from somebody wanting to play tennis in their local area and not sure how they can access their local club. So I can support them in linking them into the organisations and giving them hints and tips of things to say. The challenge that we have is that we see disability sometimes as a separate entity. We see it as in a silo and don't think about accessing opportunities. Sometimes organisations look at the issue rather than the solution, and I find that quite a lot, that most clubs that I've worked with, once they've had a bit of support and maybe a bit of training and advice, they go, oh, this is easy and it's fantastic, that we see so many children. And it is important. It's part of life, whether you enjoy sport now at school, but it is a part of your life that will be with you forever. And being more active and enjoying the social aspect of being involved in sport and physical activity with friends and family is so important. So we can direct people to organisations. There's people out there that provide adapted cycles. There's governing bodies that provide information around where you can access the opportunities to participate. What we find is it's information that's the biggest barrier for people to participate.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that. And you were talking about schools as well. And you talked about schools' legal obligation. And there might be a lot of schools that our members find that actually they're very willing and able and want to help children with limb differences, but maybe just don't have that knowledge that you were talking about. How would you suggest that a parent approaches a school to help them? Because at the end of the day, they don't want to be antagonistic to the school, but at the same stage, they want to make sure the school provides for their child. What kind of approach would you suggest they take?
It's an understanding of the system. So I mentioned the Youth Sport Trust, and please look at their website. They provide so much information for children to participate in sport and physical activity, be them non-disabled or disabled. So they provide a number of resources, they provide training, they provide local hubs, as I've talked about, that the school can access to have some support. And we find in the vast majority of cases that it's just directing people to the right piece of information, and teachers are very, very receptive to information. So if you're going through a transition with your child and sat in the school and talking to the school, then really it's great when parents say, I want my child to be fully involved and immersed in school life and be involved in PE and sport and all the things that PE and sport brings, such as leadership skills and volunteering opportunities. And having these organisations like the Youth Sport Trust and ourselves and governing bodies, it does really help the school enhance what they offer for all children, not just children with a disability.
And it's really positive to hear about so much collaboration between the different charities and different organisations as well. And the fact that you're here with us talking to Reach Families today is fantastic. In terms of helping people to get that more information, because again, people want to know about local clubs and different areas where they are particularly good at looking after children with limb differences. What sort of place, apart from yourselves, is a good place to ask or find that kind of information out to know how good they are?
There is an organisation called Parasport that have a website, and they provide a club finder for people. In my experience, clubs are never going to turn around and say they're not inclusive, because they have to. They have a legal obligation. What we find is it's usually reticence and it's usually lack of knowledge. So your local authority is a really, really good place to start. Or and ask the school where the clubs are. All clubs should be inclusive of any child, whatever their impairment. It's just the support they need. And it's actually, for most clubs, it's just lack of knowledge that they'll hold their hand up and say. So there isn't one website that allows you to find the best club. It's actually going to your local authority, asking them where the local badminton club is, and asking them questions around their policies and their child protection. There are some resources out there that look at the quality of clubs called Club Mark. So clubs that are club marked have a lot more things in place. But every club should be and is accessible to disabled people. It's just the questions and maybe some advice that you can offer clubs if they feel that they're not as confident or supportive. They can get support from their governing body, or they can get support from ourselves.
You started in 2009, and of course that was perfect timing with the Paralympics, which was such a huge success in London in 2012. What about the legacy from that? I presume you probably saw quite a big uplift as a result of the Paralympics. What about the legacy that left in terms of sport for people with limb differences around the country?
I think the massive investment that went into sport per se was fantastic, and I feel that there was a real euphoria around the Paralympics. I found it very positive experience. I was actually proud to be disabled, if that makes sense. You know, being out in my shorts and people recognizing that I only had one limb, you found yourself, you know, your chest was puffed out. You found yourself quite special, even though I wasn't a Paralympian. So that's had a big effect, and the funding obviously continued, and Sport England that allocates the funding were ensuring that governing bodies are as inclusive as possible. Like anything, you know, new initiatives come through. We have had Black Lives Matter, and that tends to take those initiatives tend to take a little bit more profile. Disability has always been there. It's just about the question. So there's a lot more provision. There's a lot more opportunity to access equipment should you need equipment. There's a huge amount of research done in universities, and I have numerous PhD students contact me about making some equipment more accessible. We've done some work with archery just recently, having children with upper limb shoot. Obviously, in life, some people are better than others. There are some fantastic governing bodies of sport, some fantastic clubs out there that do some amazing work. And then there's others that probably just need a little bit more support and guidance. So the Paralympics has made a difference. We just need to make sure that our amputees, our people with limb impairment, are seen in the community. And I would reiterate that if we can encourage more children to become volunteers and to become leaders and become coaches, what better thing of self-esteem of having a child with a disability or an adult with a disability leading a coaching session, and not necessarily a coaching session for other disabled children, but a coaching session for mainstream. I've got a good friend who works at Everton Football Club, who's an above-knee amputee, who's played football for England amputees, and he's a UEFA coach, and he coaches the under-18s Everton football team. So he's a great advocate, and that's what we need. We need to see more disabled people having those types of roles.
And it's why actually at Reach we're incredibly proud of our Reach ambassadors who do a tremendous amount of work in inspiring youngsters coming through. I'd just like to finish off by talking about the future, because without question, the ability to look after people with limb differences has changed tremendously over the last few years, which is fantastic. What about the future? How optimistic are you that this, if you like, this roller coaster of improvement continues, and that we see the provision for people with limb differences increasing more and more and more?
Oh, I'm extremely positive. It's good to keep me in a job. Sports development jobs they work on the principle that you do yourself out of a job, because if every opportunity was inclusive, then they wouldn't need the likes of me and other sports development officers. So we're always going to need people like myself and others. But yeah, I'm truly inspired by how disability is portrayed on TV now, how we see it a lot more in the community. Sport England, our funder, is about to announce their new strategy starting in the next few weeks, and that will again be focusing on disadvantaged groups, of which disabled people are, so there will be continued funding there. And it's just raising that profile and using the ambassadors. I'm a great believer of raising self-esteem. Why should you not feel proud of what you achieve? And we can achieve whatever we want. Don't let anybody ever tell you can't achieve, because you can, and the opportunities are out there for you to achieve and reach your goal, whatever that might be.
And what a great way to finish. You're absolutely right, Andy. The opportunities are absolutely there. The support is absolutely there. And thank you again for all of those links to the various organisations who can have a tremendous benefit for our members with all of the resources that they have as well. So thank you so much indeed again for joining us, for sharing such valuable information. Thank you for all the Fabulous work you're doing, and we hope to see you again at Reach very, very soon. In the meantime,
Thank
Andy
you.
Brittles from Limb Power, thanks very much indeed. Please do get involved in the chat that you see beneath this. And also, we'll see you again next week for another insight next Saturday at 10 o'clock. Bye for now.